Chapter 1 of The Temptation of Saint Anthony. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Tony Addison. The Temptation of Saint Anthony by Gustave Flaubert. Translated by Lafcadio Hearn. Argument. Frailty. Sunset in the desert. Enfeebled by prolonged fasting, the hermit finds himself unable to concentrate his mind upon holy things. His thoughts wander. Memories of youth evoke regrets that his relaxed will can no longer find strength to suppress, and remembrance begetting remembrance, his fancy leads him upon dangerous ground. He dreams of his flight from home, of Ammonaria, his sister's playmate, of his misery in the waste, his visit to Alexandria with the blind monk Didymus, the unholy sights of the luxurious city. Involuntarily he yields to the nervous dissatisfaction growing upon him. He laments his solitude, his joylessness, his poverty, the obscurity of his life. Grace departs from him. Hope burns low within his heart. Suddenly, revolting against his weakness, he seeks refuge from distraction in the study of the Scriptures. Vain effort! An invisible hand turns the leaves, placing perilous texts before his eyes. He dreams of the Maccabees slaughtering their enemies, and desires that he might do likewise with the Arians of Alexandria. He becomes inspired with admiration of King Nebuchadnezzar. He meditates voluptuously upon the visit of Sheba's queen of Solomon, discovers a text in the Acts of the Apostles antagonistic to principles of monkish asceticism, indulges in reveries regarding the riches of biblical kings and holy men. The tempter comes to tempt him with evil hallucinations, for which the saint's momentary frailty has paved the way, and with the evil one come also the 7 deadly sins. Phantom gold is piled up to excite covetousness. Shadowy banquets appear to evoke gluttony. The scene shifts to aid the temptations of anger and of pride. Anthony finds himself in Alexandria, at the head of a wild army of monks, slaughtering the heretics and the pagans without mercy for age or sex, in fantastic obedience to the course of his fancy while reading the Scriptures a while before, and like an invisible echo of his evil thoughts, the scene changes again. Alexandria is transformed into Constantinople. Antony finds himself the honored of the emperor. He beholds the vast circus in all its splendor, the ocean of faces, the tumult of excitement. Simultaneously, he beholds his enemies degraded to the condition of slaves, toiling in the stables of Constantine. He feels joy in the degradation of the fathers of Nicaea. Then all is transformed. It is no longer the splendor of Constantinople he beholds under the luminosity of a Greek day, but the prodigious palace of Nebuchadnezzar by night. He beholds the orgies, the luxuries, the abominations, and the spirit of pride enters triumphantly into him as the spirit of Nebuchadnezzar. Awaking as from a dream, he finds himself again before his hermitage. A vast caravan approaches, halts, and the Queen of Sheba descends to tempt the saint with the deadliest of all temptations. Her beauty is enhanced by oriental splendor of adornment. Her converse is a song of witchcraft. The saint remains firm. The 7 deadly sins depart from him. The heresiarchs. But now the tempter assumes a subtler form. Under the guise of a former disciple of Antony, Hilarion, the demon, while pretending to seek instruction, endeavors to poison the mind of Antony with hatred of the fathers of the church. He repeats all the scandals amassed by ecclesiastical intriguers, all the calumnies created by malice. He cites texts only to foment doubt, and quotes the evangels only to make confusion. Under the pretext of obtaining mental enlightenment from the wisest of men, he induces Antony to enter with him into a spectral basilica, wherein are assembled all the heresiarchs of the 3rd century. The hermit is confounded by the multitude of tenets, horrified by the blasphemies and abominations of Elchas, Corpocrates, Valentinus Manes Sardo, disgusted by the perversions of the Paternians, Marcosians, Montanists, Samptians, bewildered by the apocryphal Gospels of Eve and of Judas, of the Lord and of Thomas. And Hilarion grows taller. The martyrs. Antony finds himself in the dungeons of a vast amphitheatre, among Christians condemned to the wild beasts. By this hallucination the tempter would prove to the saint that martyrdom is not always suffered for purest motives. Antony finds the martyrs possessed by bigotry and insincerity. He sees many compelled to die against their will, many who would forswear their faith could it avail them aught. He beholds heretics die for their heterodoxy more nobly than orthodox believers. And he finds himself transported to the tombs of the martyrs. He witnesses the meetings of Christian women at the sepulchres. He beholds the touching ceremonies of prayer change into orgies, lamentations give place to amorous dalliance. The magicians. Then the tempter seeks to shake Antony's faith in the excellence and evidence of miracles. He assumes the form of a Hindu Brahmin, terminating a life of wondrous holiness by self-cremation. He appears as Simon Magus and Helen of Tyre, as Apollonius of Tyans, greatest of all thaumaturgists, who claims superiority to Christ. All the marvels related by Philostratus are embodied in the converse of Apollonius and Damis. The gods. Hilarion reappears, taller than ever, growing more gigantic in proportion to the increasing weakness of the saint. Standing beside Antony, he evokes all the deities of the antique world. They defile before him in a marvelous panorama, gods of Egypt and India, Chaldea and Hellas, Babylon and Ultima Thule, monstrous and multiform, phallic and ithyphallic, fantastic or obscene. Some intoxicate by their beauty, others appall by their foulness. The Buddha recounts the story of his wondrous life. Venus displays the rounded daintiness of her nudity. Isis utters awful soliloquy. Lastly, the phantom of Jehovah appears as the shadow of a god passing away for ever. Suddenly, the stature of Hilarion towers to the stars. He assumes the likeness and luminosity of Lucifer. He announces himself as Science. And Antony is lifted upon mighty wings and borne away beyond the world, above the solar system, above the starry arch of the Milky Way. All future discoveries of astronomy are revealed to him. He is tempted by the revelation of innumerable worlds, by the refutation of all his previous ideas of the nature of the universe, by the enigmas of infinity, by all the marvels that conflict with faith. Even in the night of immensity, the demon renews the temptation of reason. Antony wavers upon the verge of pantheism. Lust and death. Antony, abandoned by the spirit of science, comes to himself in the desert. Then the tempter returns under a twofold aspect, as the spirit of lust and the spirit of destruction. The latter urges him to suicide, the former to indulgence of sense. They inspire him with strong fancies of palingenesis, of the illusion of death, of the continuity of life. The pantheistic temptation intensified. The monsters. Antony, in reveries, meditates upon the monstrous symbols painted upon the walls of certain ancient temples. Could he know their meaning, he might learn also something of the secret lien between matter and thought. Forthwith a phantasmagoria of monsters commenced to pass before his eyes: the Sphinx and the Chimera, the Blemmyes and Astomai, the Cynocephali, and all creatures of mythology creation. He beholds the fabulous beings of oriental imagining, the abnormities described by Pliny and Herodotus, the fantasticalities to be later adopted by heraldry, the grotesqueries of future medieval illumination made animate, the goblinries and foulnesses of superstitious fancy, the witches' Sabbath of abominations. Metamorphosis. The multitude of monsters melts away. The land changes into an ocean. The creatures of the briny abysses appear, and the waters in turn also change. Seaweeds are transformed to herbs. Forests of coral give place to forests of trees. Polypus life changes to vegetation. Metals crystallize. Frosts effloresce. Plants become living things. Inanimate matter takes animate form. Monads vibrate. The pantheism of nature makes itself manifest. Antony feels a delirious desire to unite himself with the spirit of universal being. The vision vanishes. The sun arises. The face of Christ is revealed. The temptation has passed. Antony kneels in prayer. L. 8.